I'm gonna record you a Kirblog, cause you asked for it, but you don't need one from me, cause you could go watch something else if you want, for all I care. This question, stop me if you've heard this one before. I've been sitting on this question for a really long time, but it has been a long time since I've actually done a user-submitted topic. So, this is from Reiji Arisu. Hey there, Kirb. I'm looking to better myself as a writer. I have my own story ideas, and I've written a few stories as well. Is there any advice you could tell someone like me about your process on your episodes, like scripts, characters, and anything else you could share? So my reason for wanting to do this one is actually because a couple days ago, I was talking with a certain friend of mine who I had not talked to in a long time. We were catching up and, kind of updating each other on our lives and everything and what we've been up to for the last year or so. And they had told me that they were really interested in writing a book someday, but they really didn't quite know how to get started. And so I was talking with them for about an hour about that particular subject, and I remembered this question, which again I had been sitting on for a very, very long time, and figured, oh, you know what, this is perfect. This would be a great one to do just before the 2-year Kirblog anniversary. So apologies, Reiji, for taking so long to get to this one, but I figured I could lend some advice. So I'm going to be repeating probably a lot of information that I've talked about on other Kirblogs as per the usual, but I'm going to kind of put everything that I remember from that conversation with this friend of mine that is relevant to the question into this as much as possible, and hopefully this will work. I thought that an advice Kirblog would be something kind of nice and uplifting to toss in before the 2-year anniversary, I guess you could say. So either way, so the first thing I talked about was the most important thing, and this is one that I think I did a whole entire Kirblog about, is what is it that you're trying to say with your story? Anybody can come up with any kind of genre, with any kind of concept or setting or whatever. I forget exactly what the phrase is, but how there's only X amount of different kinds of stories in the world, and it just comes down to the execution and everything. What I find personally is that there's that personal kind of message. There's a moral sometimes that really good stories have, beneath them. Of course, you can also just do something for pure entertainment, but I prefer something, again, that you can take something away from emotionally or philosophically or just anything like that. Just something that'll leave a little bit of a lasting impact. I find that if in some cases, if you really get to the core of that ahead of time, then if anything, building all the cool stuff around it, makes it much easier, it really depends on exactly what the circumstance is, like depending on how much material you're working with in the first place, because that's the next kind of thing, is having limitations set for yourself. If you have any kind of things in place to come up with a story from there, you can go with it. An example would be, for instance, I did a film back in college called There Was This One Time, which was, okay, what if I took 3 character voices that the guys from Team 4-Star have done and made them into original cartoon characters, and I built a plot around that. And, considering it was inspired by Abridgers, and I was thinking about Little Karibo, of course, who was still doing Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, I thought, okay, how about they're playing a card game? So it started as, so there was this one time where a bat, a rhino, a ferret, and an old man all got together and played a card game. And then from there, I was able to collaborate with the guys from Team 4-Star to write the script, and we made a short little, 2-3 minute cartoon, however long it was. And that's a very relatively simple kind of, whatever, throwaway cartoon story. It's just a one-off thing. Obviously, if you're going with something, very, long and in-depth, and also, of course, it depends on the medium. If you could be writing a book, like my friend. You could be making a video game. You could be doing a show or a standalone movie. But I think the overarching kind of deal that helps tie everything together is having again, that theme, that sort of your own personal voice coming through whatever the the message of the story is supposed to be. And sometimes it can be multiple, or sometimes they can all be tied together in some way, depending on what it is. Especially if you have a fairly big cast of characters, and each of them are going to be kind of going through their own individual arcs of development. Sometimes they're all completely different. Sometimes they tie in together. It's the sky is the limit. But in terms of getting started, there's a lot of different routes that you can go. What I often like to do is I look back to my childhood, both for the things that inspired me as a kid that really stuck with me and as to why they did. And my childhood in terms of, and actually even just past my childhood, but even my adult life, the people around me who inspire me and who I feel in some ways make for great material to write about. Now, in a Kirblog I talked about a couple months ago, obviously I also talked about the idea of self-insert characters and kind of the pitfalls of that. But kind of just to summarize that a little bit and kind of tie it into this particular subject, the positive side of that is it's supposed to be about you draw from your own life experiences and you integrate them in a way that is meant to be, serviceable and interesting. In the case of myself, often what I do, and what I've been really trying to do as of late, and especially in the case of Tome, is I've tried to look at a lot of my shortcomings and my fuck-ups and a lot of my mistakes throughout my life and extrapolate upon those to tell a story, because those can make for great cautionary tales. Likewise for myself, my friends from way back in the day and from now and etc., from all over my life, serve as the biggest source of inspiration, not only because I think that a lot of them make for interesting bases for characters, sometimes combining different pieces together of different friends or crossing two, friends' personalities together into one, sort of new thing, but also sometimes their hardships and the things that they've been through. And, a lot of people I know who have been through really, really bad, far worse things than I ever have, or made far worse mistakes than I ever had, or et cetera. And that's been incredibly inspiring to me. Or even sometimes just something as basic as them being a good person, can be really inspiring. Inversely, sometimes even people being really bad. A really bad person can make for great villain material, as I've definitely learned over the years. Obviously not naming names or anything, but, witnessing bad things that other people have done and learning from those mistakes that they have made that have, really come back to bite them in the ass has provided a lot of inspiration for, where the conflicts come from and why characters butt heads and why bad things happen in the world, etc. Far beyond obviously just, the really dire stuff like, when there are terrorist attacks and wars and et cetera, and truly awful things that happen, but intersocial, interpersonal kind of things that happen between just like, one or two different people or more, depending. Even just a lot of that can serve for a conflict to start with. And sometimes the conflict itself can actually help you figure out, okay, what is it that I want to say? A bad experience can sometimes shed the light on a better experience to draw from and to come back from something and to then want to make an entire story about it. And the point typically is supposed to be that you want to share these kind of experiences with the rest of the world so that people can get something out of it and learn, and then therefore, maybe be inspired in the process and get something out of it for themselves and for their own lives. Is typically kind of what it is, and of course also it's a self-expression, which I have talked about pretty recently as well. So there's a lot of that, and all those things can be major factors into finding just that right thing that's like, oh, that's it, that's what I want to say, that's what I want to do this story about, and etc. And again, once you kind of have those things laid down, from there on out, again, the sky is the limit on what it is that you want to do. Certain things definitely fit better into, depending on whatever your medium is. If you're writing a book, it can be absolutely anything that you want, anywhere, anyhow, whatever, because it's just words. If you're doing animation, or a movie of some kind or anything, or live action, obviously you're limited to the resources of what you have in order to tell that story, because, you need, people to be there to do it. Or, in some cases there are times where you can do it completely on your own, but you still need the resources and the skill and the ability to execute it properly. With a video game, it's the most difficult in some cases because it's interactive, and so therefore often you leave up certain choices to the player unless it's just a straightforward linear kind of story. Like in the case of I've been working on the script for Cryomore recently. In that's a case where I had limitations of, okay, these are the characters, these are their personalities, this is the world they're in, this is the progression of the game. And so I had to take the basic bones of what the world building was, which we had long, development periods of coming up with exactly how everything worked and what the sort of ins and outs of how the world of Cryomore operated. And from there, I was able to go, okay, well, now I can take this material and work with it to, tell a story and portray a certain message of some kind that can get across to the people who are playing it. And obviously I have to stick within the limitations of the game itself and the fact that it's interactive. So there were a lot of different things that I had to keep in mind while coming up with a story to go with it. In the case of Cryomore, I'm not going to spoil too much because obviously I want you guys to play the game when it's all finished and comes out, hopefully sometime next year. But what I'll say is that in the case of Cryomore, the basic kind of gist of that was it's a story about an intelligent and I guess relatively privileged human being, but one who is very open-minded and curious to learn about the world around them. Faced with that's a dog outside if you can hear that. There's lots around here. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. They're faced with trying to do the right thing in order to help their people, and they're very unsure of themselves and continuing to not be. They're not entirely certain as to whether what they're doing or not is the right thing for everybody's best interest, basically. And they're met with an opposing force who is fully confident in what it is that they're doing. This is the villain, but what they're doing is completely wrong and not the right way to be going about it. That's redundant. Good job. I did it, Chris. Anyway, so again, that was taking the fact that, okay, this is a medium where it's interactive and I have to adhere within the limitations of it being a game, and these are characters in a world that was created originally by Robin Allen, and of course, obviously, like a lot of the rest of the team all weighed in and we, helped come up with ideas with each other and everything. But it was the creation of somebody else, and I had to take that material and those limitations and make a story that was retrofitted into the progression of the gameplay, And that allowed me to write what I consider to be a pretty decent story from what I was able to look at and from what I was able to accomplish in about a span of a month and a half or so that I worked on the script for it. In the case of Tome, I guess, Tome, I mean, I've told the story many times, but that started from just, that was a case where I created the setting and characters before I really had the theme in mind. But I think what the theme was ended up just kind of coming as a result of the setting. In which the theme itself is, you can find people who really care about you and bond with you and can be like your family, even on the internet. Even if you can't see them in person, you can still form bonds that strong with people, and they'll still always be there for you, and etc. I think that was kind of the basic, and again, that is a very, very simple kind of theme to it. It's not bad, but it's very, very simple. And thankfully, a lot of people who have really enjoyed the show have connected very much with that theme, and that's awesome. But the truth of the matter is, I came up with that kind of in tandem with Mike Lucas, way back over 10 years ago on this forum, and we just, he moved away, and we were keeping in touch over the forum, and we met all these people who we became friends with at the time, and we were finding solace in the fact that we were separated and meeting new people and having, learning a lot more about other types of folks from far outside of the folks in New York that we grew up with, etc. And then as a result, it's like, okay, well, I'll make it on the internet. I'll make it on a virtual reality video game because we're really inspired by Dot Hack and Mega Man Battle Network at the time. And I'll make all the characters literally I'll take the screen names of these people that we've met on this message board on fucking TV Tome and make them into characters as a result. And that's how it went, So that was a very kind of, out of order sort of thing. And that's also why in the long run, it's not the most, just conceptually, it's not the most ingenious or, deep or in-depth or high-quality story experience ever. And I know that I can do a lot better than that. It's definitely got the makings of something that could be really cool, but I know that I can also do a lot better in general, which is the reason why, for instance, in the case of Balancing Act, which I have no idea, that's definitely not coming next, but it's definitely something that I want to do, and I'm going to do it eventually. But right now, in terms of to kind of relate to, both my friend who talked to me about wanting to make their own story and to Reiji who asked this question, in the case of Balancing Act, I'm really trying to dig deep and figure out exactly what the core theme of that story is. And I've been getting closer and closer in the last year, interestingly enough, as a result of a lot of the bad experiences that I've had and kind of discovering new things about myself as a person. And, again, making a lot of mistakes and learning from those mistakes, hopefully, in theory, and applying them to my own life. And Balancing Act is probably the biggest parallel to my real life in terms of just, it's all of my life experiences in one kind of, surmised thing, I guess you can say. And I'm still really kind of like digging deep and figuring out exactly what I'm going to do with that before I really go ahead and actually make it. But again, it is a story that I want to share with the entire world as soon as I know it. I'm fully confident in it, and it's something that is worth it to share with everybody. I keep seeing the phrase dig deep, and I know that sounds like a broken record, but what I mean by that is you really have to dig deep into yourself, into your own life, and figure out, what it is from your life, everything, the people that you know, the things that you've done, the things that you've seen, the experiences that you've had. I can't remember if I've said this on a Kirblog before, but it absolutely bears repeating. No matter what it is that you do, you got to have a life. You got to have a real life with real experiences to draw from in the first place, or nothing that you tell in terms of a story of any kind is going to have anything to it. You have to be a full-fledged human being with enough of a sense of oneself. And I've talked also about knowing yourself is not easy either. That's a whole nother, deal that you have to come to terms with, and it isn't going to fucking happen overnight. But I also often think everybody is the main character of their own story. Everybody, goes through their own, good and bad life experiences, I think, to any kind of degree. They can be, to any kind of extreme, or, only just a typical kind of, average American extreme of like, oh no, I don't know what I'm doing with my career, or, oh no, I don't know if I'm going to eat tomorrow, because if I live in a third world country kind of thing, it really depends. And that's not to place one amount of importance over another. Every life is, holds value to it, and everything has meaning to it. You just have to really figure out what is it that you care about? What is it that is impactful and important to you, that you feel is the voice that you want to shout to the across the rooftops? Like what is it that is important to you that is worth to share, that you really truly feel is worth sharing? This friend of mine who I had this conversation with, I'm keeping their identity a secret just because I don't know if they want people to know that they want to do this someday, but either way. And if they happen to listen to this later, this friend also works in medicine. So, maybe even in a case like that, Osamu Tezuka was a doctor, and Blackjack was a story entirely like his experiences as a doctor. And some people say it's kind of Gary Stewish, and sure, whatever, maybe. But the point is that was his experiences as a person in the field of medicine, as a sci-fi comic. I think Blackjack is sci-fi. Please don't crucify me. I haven't read it. I apologize. I know I need to watch a lot of Tezuka stuff. I should. Either way. That's what I mean. In my case, I was a relatively average American kid, and, I grew up, I was made fun of because I was a nerd and I liked to draw or whatever. And I watched a lot of, the stuff that I liked, in cartoons, and I became really invested in animation. And the things that I care about the most are social interaction between people and how people treat each other, and, how people make friends and enemies, and how people, discover themselves and discover their purposes. A lot of those kind of things are what are really important and impactful to me throughout my life. I've had I've lived a pretty privileged life. I'm a stereotypical, dime a dozen, as what Bo Burnham have said, perfectly cylindrical, checker pieces in God's, God and Satan's backgammon game, or whatever the fuck it is. I have a pretty normal life, and I can check my privilege. It's whatever. But that's to say, my experiences are my experiences, and I derive whatever I could from those into a tangible medium. And especially in the case now, where as a result of the stuff that I've done, I've grown. At this point, I've reached almost 100,000 people, even just on YouTube alone, who give a shit about what it is that I do and what I have to say, and that is very also personally meaningful to me. So I want I would take responsibility for that platform that I have to share something with people that is, again, of value, and is something that can hopefully impact people in a very positive way, because I think that that's what should be done. I think that that is absolutely, necessary for when you have that kind of responsibility. And that's just for myself. That was very long-winded. Hopefully that helped a little bit. I feel like I'm barely probably scratching the surface, but that's kind of the starting point. I hope that does help a little bit. In the comments below, if Reiji, if you hear this, or anybody else who's curious about this, if you have any other further questions, maybe I can answer some more about this possibly in the comments. Can't guarantee anything, but if I'm able to, I'll certainly try, because obviously we got Thanksgiving coming up soon. Those of you who celebrate Thanksgiving, I hope you have a happy one and are spending it with loved ones of all kinds. I'm going to be spending it with friends locally here, because sadly I'm not going back home to New York until the Christmas, December holiday, I should say, to be PC about a PC bra. And until then, so I'm going to be spending it with some friends out here. I hope that you're spending it with good people as well. And I guess I'll have some information about future Kirblog topics that you can suggest for next month. But in the meantime, the next Kirblog for the following Saturday is going to be the 2-year Kirblog anniversary. So look forward to that. Thank you all for sticking through for all these years. And if you're new, thank you for joining on board, and hope you've been enjoying what you watch and see and listen and etc. And that'll do it. I hope this helped. Thank you, everybody, as always, for listening. I truly always appreciate it, very much so. And I will see you all very soon. Bye-bye.